everyone. Good afternoon, or morning, wherever you are. Kenneth Loren here with Loren Greiff. And we're going to be talking today about content with intention. I think a lot of us just post content. We don't necessarily have a strategy to it or not. What I wanted to do is probably share a little bit of what I did today, which definitely would resonate with people here. What do you do about posting content? So yesterday, as I just mentioned to Loren, I had a volunteer session. I do 1:30 to 2:30 every day, every Monday rather, with people who are in transition, and no one showed up. Waited 5-10 minutes. No one showed up. When you're in a meeting in person, sometimes you kind of have that unofficial 10-minute rule. If you're not there, the meeting starts without you, or if you're not, or if the person runs the meeting, they don't show up, you just leave. Or if you're in a classroom, the same thing. So I put a question up today about how would you feel about that, or what's your process? And thing was blowing up. And I have to thank Brenda Meller, a little bit of a shout out there, because she was the one who said, just post from your heart and what you're thinking about instead of trying to invent something. So Loren is probably one of my go-to people about when I watch what she posts, because you've been all over the place posting all different types of content, Loren. So welcome back here today.
Thank you so much, Ken. You are the yang to my yin. So love collaborating.
Is that the way it is, or am I yin or am I yang? I'm not even sure anymore.
Well, you're the yang because you're the lang yang.
Right. So what have you been up to since we last chatted?
So, I really want to focus in intentionally in this session and talk about content with intention. And, there are some incredible content creators on LinkedIn. I know that it is, some people have a natural gift for writing. Some people are amazing with short form content. Others are like supreme at incorporating great visuals. Everyone has kind of their own vibe, their own style. And, the intention that I see that has been behind most successful content writers is really knowing their audience, right? They are completely tuned in, not just to the message, but also a lot of the nuances of their particular audience, their target, what keeps them up at night, what problems that they face, how are they challenged, what are they frustrated with, and offering some level of solutions that make it accessible for them to take action, right? So the LinkedIn platform, for anyone who doesn't write content, I want you to know, is unbelievably generous, collaborative, and people who say, I don't know what to write, or I don't have anything to write about, or I think I don't have anything to write about, are actually primed for this particular episode, because you do not need to rack your brain trying to figure out what that is. You already have it all up here. So look no further. It's available to you because everyone has a story of some kind.
Right. I know, like I was writing down, and I was on a session today with LinkedIn Learning and listening to them. I don't know if you were on the session or other people were, but I was jotting down notes as to things that were coming up for content ideas, because it's just amazing. You sit there, and if the best thing about writing content is not to overthink it. You'd be surprised how easy it can be when you actually just sit down and think about your experiences. And I think that's a big key, is write from your experiences as well. Don't try to write about something you're not comfortable with, that you can't, react to.
Exactly. And I mean, I don't know about for you. I do track my content, and what I can tell you is I could give away the best tip in the world, and it will not have the same level of engagement as a personal story. And there's been a lot of talk about, is LinkedIn turning into Facebook, and all this conversation around, how personal can you get on LinkedIn? And I think that for everyone, you can kind of assess your own limitations, but at the same point, what I do know is what comes from the heart reaches the heart. I learned that a long time ago, not with content, just in the world. I think that there is definitely a place for a level of vulnerability. And we see people talking about, I've been let go, or I struggled with, depression, or I, have been through so many rejections in the job search. And the LinkedIn family, the audience of people out there are by and large there for one reason, which is to support you in whatever journey you're on. So I really have found it to be incredibly and even surprisingly welcoming.
I think one of the things that I have to remind myself about is that your audience keeps changing and growing as people go on the platform. So maybe it's the same type of thing I may have written before, but with a little bit of a twist. And so you realize that it's not the same 50 or 100 people. And I'm a big believer with all the back and forth about the number of views. It's about engagement. I'm not as concerned about how many people view the content. I'd rather have the engagement and engage in other people's posts. And I think that's what I try to preach to people too, because none of us can figure out the algorithm. No one knows exactly when. So
that's a huge waste of your energy. Like, spend that time, reallocate it into commenting on a handful of people that you admire their content, that their messages resonate with you, that you may want to develop relationships with. There's so many. I mean, even right now, shout out to Shelley Piedmont, great content writer. I look forward to every Monday. I look forward to her, her Monday number. Like, I know that that's coming because she's consistent.
And Brenda, the same thing. Brenda.
Like, knock it out of the park, Brenda. I mean, seriously, like, the value, the collaboration, all these things are rolled up into her content regularly. And that consistency, it doesn't have to be every single day that you're posting content, but I do think that having a presence on there, whether, some days for me are just commenting days. I'm like, I just want to spend the day, giving it out to the people that I love and want to support, because their content's so good.
So I was going to say, and Deb, and we're in the New York City area, and Deb is talking about the frozen traffic. We have the UN General Assembly, and I could think of so many different ways to take that event and put it in a sense of content, whether you're frozen in job search or something like that. And it's something people can relate to, but you might be taking a personal experience like that. And then how do you take that and make that, in a way that works for you? And that's kind of the way my mind works.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, one of the people that does that really well too is takes her personal stories from her family, from her children, and then repositions it to make it applicable to job seeker is Sarah Johnston, right?
Yeah.
She's a great storyteller and brings a lot of those kind of like metaphors and analogies into her work, which I love and respect. And other people too who are really imaginative with all the other features that LinkedIn allows you to do. So just like you're not going to eat the same food every single day, you want to rotate your content, right? You want to make sure that you're not like just doing the same thing all the time. Although some people like Austin has a formula that works for him. So, again, there's different ways to slice and dice it for sure.
So I want to do a shout out to some of my tribe here. I got Carol McCullough from New Jersey, Sean Turconi, hopefully it's pronounced, from Virginia Beach, Don from New Jersey too, Nancy, same thing, Sam, Terry, shout out to Terry Seaman, does some great content as well. And we have Angus Grady in the house from England. Sandra Thomas, and of course my Alex Freund. He loves your LinkedIn video, especially you dancing at the end. And that is actually the way, we've never met in real life. It almost seems like we have, honestly.
I know, right?
But we haven't done it yet. We will. I can't wait. I mean, we've shared so many different experiences. And I think one of the things, first of all, if anyone has any comments and wants to, put something in the chat, we're happy to answer the question.
Ask away. Anything.
I mean, one thing, I do this thing too, with you and with Dan and with Rachel. We've been, sharing kind of I spread the goodies, if you will, with our holidays. And I think you wrote a post about how it's important to nurture your network, kind of as a kickoff of that. And I just think that engagement, it just one thing goes after the other. I mean, you just take the conversations and you just build content from them, and you never know where it's going to go. And it isn't even a worrisome thing to me is how much I get from it. I mean, right.
I also want to do a huge shout out. Let me make sure that, it's right here. And keep it very close to me. If anybody is really curious about what LinkedIn, what content building blocks look like and how you can use it to elevate your brand, huge shout out to the czar of content, John Asperian. This book helped me very much in really making sure that the tonality, the branding, the messaging was in alignment, not just with what I did, but also with the types of people that I really love to serve. So just letting you guys know, I work specifically with senior level creatives and marketers. They like irreverence. They love irreverence. They're people who are extremely innovative, like hugely curious, don't want any dumbing it down, and a lot of plain speak. And so if in my content, I try to make it as, person to person as possible. I use the words yup all the time, or, I'm a big emoji girl. And because that's the way I speak, that's the way I text, that's the way I write, and that's the way my content is. So it's continuous.
And the funny thing about it is this whole thing started, we met more than a year ago, and I'm not sure if it was what the call was or not, but you are a total extrovert and I'm an introvert. And we talked about that, and you became yin and I became yang because we were yin and yang. We kind of balanced off each other. And I think it's so important to recognize that. And you got me out of my comfort zone in a good way, although at the time I wasn't really sure.
My clients say the same thing.
But that's good.
I love you and I hate you.
So this is a great comment from Angus. If you can't hear your own voice when you read your content, you need to change it. Content should make your ears content. And I got to tell you, sometimes the more I struggle over what I'm going to write on a day, the more I realize, why am I writing it? It should pretty much come out. I mean, I have my ideas off to the side, but I will sit down and it just flows.
Absolutely. Yeah. So for anybody who may not necessarily understand, so why would I write content? Yes, engagement. Okay, that's intuitive. But what is the value of that, outside of community and all of that? And so whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you are a leader, whether you are a job seeker, whether you are an influencer, LinkedIn is your reach vehicle, right? And writing content allows your thought leadership to spread. And it could spread like wildfire, depending on the intention of the message, right? And depending on what it is. I mean, you have a post that's blowing up today. It's highly relevant, right? It's highly relevant. So everyone can relate to it. I also, a while ago, did a poll on does humor belong in the interview process? And it just struck a nerve. A lot of people were like, I don't know. Should I or should I? Should I not be funny? Should I be funny? And it was very interesting to be able to see how, the audience of, I guess, humor advocates or humor naysayers responded. But, that's just one vehicle polls. And there's also a lot of talk about how that's been really saturated. But again, part of a rotation.
I think there's a basic fear that most people have of getting started. Why would anyone want to read what I have to say? Why would I respond? What if it's not right? What if they make fun of me? I mean, and really, it's hard. I mean, I was one of those lurkers in the very beginning. I didn't know if I should say anything or not. But once you do it, it's like you're taking the training wheels off a bicycle and you ride, and you know, is as much perception as anything else. You know,
What if you're helping somebody? What if somebody needed to have that shout out today? What if somebody, learned something that, had a big impact on their career or their personal life? What if you met a new person that, turned out to be somebody who became a lifelong friend? What if? I mean, there's always a way to replace something that is a fear with an opportunity that may not be foreseen.
now, do you have any thoughts when you post content about any tagging or hashtags, or because there's so much of a back and forth about that? And just so people know, if you don't know what a tagging is, if you do an ampersand and start typing the name of someone, um, they'll get notified. They'll be part of your post. Hashtag similar to Twitter. It helps in your engagement. There's been so many different changes on that. Nowadays I pretty much don't do a lot of tagging and try to do some hashtags, but I just more in my posts I don't tag anyone because I want the content to be mine, and I don't, as much as I want support, I want to earn that support on my own as much as possible.
So when I first started, I was in a LinkedIn pod.
Mm-hmm.
True story.
Yeah.
I was in a LinkedIn pod, and I think it went on for maybe 6 months. And what I realized, number one, is I didn't know any better, first of all. Second of all, I also didn't necessarily, I was engaging in everybody else's posts, but I didn't realize how much time it was going to take to actually populate everyone else's. And then what ended up happening was I realized that the people that I was in the pod with, they weren't my audience. They weren't my audience anyway. So I went cold turkey. I was like, oh, I'm done with that. So moved on and started building more of an organic reach. I do periodically tag people in it, especially when I know that something is really relevant. But what I wanted to say about pods is I think it's okay in the beginning. I used to be like, ooh, it's a hard no. But at the same time, I think it does build some level of confidence, and use it and then put an end date to it so that you don't use it indefinitely. But I think it is a good jump starter.
Definitely want to share some of these great comments too, Angus. Humor is an essential part of communication. I get everyone laughing as soon as possible. Shelley did a post.
I love this one.
Told me that what I wrote helped them see their problem in a new way. It made all the effort. Pods are for dolphins, huh? I will say this: the post that I, to this day, probably got the most amount of views had nothing to do with job search.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to do. It was, and people in my part of the country know exactly what a Malamar is. It's a candy from Nabisco, which is now no longer Nabisco. And every year in September, the second week in September, Malamars come back. It's a seasonal thing. It's a marketing thing now because you can get them all year. But I put that up there with the Malamars that are on sale, and about 110,000 views later, I was like, this was just a post I figured I'd just put up on a Sunday. And that then became a life of its own. People were saying, what about this candy? What about that candy? That's very similar. So you just never know where it's going to hit. And that's why, if you overthink stuff, it's just not a good idea.
I agree. I also, I wish I could say I was better about, I'm going to plan my content. I have some skeleton of what happens during the week, especially now that I am doing lives on Wednesday morning, blast and a half. So, I have one post that is going to announce who the guest is. Wednesday is going to be the LinkedIn Live. So those 2 days are pretty much slotted out. But the rest of the week is pretty much free and clear. Although Fridays, I do tend to do something that's a little lighthearted.
So I have to definitely give a shout out to Nancy Aronson. And Nancy Aronson, a little bit of a story about Nancy Aronson. She's from New Jersey, groups. Nancy Aronson started posting, I don't know if she does it every day, about a Zoom background of the day. She'd have a background on Zoom. She's an artist, and she'd ask what people think. And actually this weekend in Glen Rock, which is one of our towns nearby, she's going to be doing an art exhibition. And I'm anxious to see if she's going to have some Zoom backgrounds there. But the point about that is you just never know. And that's a brand. And we all think of Nancy here as the Zoom background person. And we think of Brenda. And I would hold up my social media pie book, but the laptop's going to go crazy on me. But we all have our social media pie book. And we all just love to share, but we also want to give the best practices to people because we don't want people to make the mistakes that we made. I mean, my goodness, I've made so many mistakes, and we all have, and you only learn from making mistakes and from people very nicely suggesting what to do and not to do. I mean, we're all very kind.
I want to, I see that Angus has a comment here about what do we think about over personal posts, the ones that make the person seem so virtuous and are seeking approval. Move on. You don't like it, find somebody else's content.
Well, I think Andy calls it brag tagging or something like that.
Humble bragging.
Yeah, it's like, if you have to do that, why? I mean, there's so many. I don't see a lot of the bad posts I used to see in my feed, maybe because I just kind of hit them. But you don't want to. Engagement will come to you in time, and you just try it out. I think you just never know where a post is going to come from. Where we are here in New Jersey, we can talk about the seasons changing, and we can talk about school getting back, and that's a very hot topic here. It's just what's going to be the challenging parts that we all have to deal with now, which brings up another point. You got to be very careful with what you post in terms of tone and everything else, because some things are very hard to gauge. I mean, we all have our feelings about things. I actually blocked someone, reported someone, went really political on a post. And look, it's like anything on social media. We all have our feelings and our thoughts, but this is a business platform, and you can be non-businessy, if you will, but still, you don't want to put anything up here you wouldn't share with others anywhere.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I know we're not necessarily making this content pet peeves, but I'm going to add my own in since
Sure.
I was unsolicitedly invited into this conversation. So if you are commenting on somebody's post, if you're going to go to the effort of actually commenting, please avoid great post or that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It is the reason I say that is it offers little to no value. Read the post, find something in there that matters, not for the writer to be gratified, for you as the commenter to be seen as somebody that's coming to that conversation with some, notable, insights, because that only will, again, help you, whether it's your personal brand, if you're a job seeker, yeah, you're gonna be seen as somebody who is, knowledgeable about a certain topic. So use those comments as an extension of what you are giving into the platform, and don't low level it. I think my pet peeve is a lot of mediocrity. You have control over this, and so you get to use it and be effective at it.
And I think a lot of people ask about, well, when this is over, I mean, when this recording is over, there's a lot of comments that are in the feed, and everyone on this feed that feels comfortable should be just commenting back what other people are saying as a way of building engagement, and not just like. I mean, you have a captive, you have an audience here. And I think there's so many misses and so many things that we can all do. Now, we all have best practices, and I would be curious to know, Do you have in your mind certain days of the week that you're going to post certain types of things, or is it just pretty much free form, whatever you think about?
So as I mentioned, Wednesdays I know I'm doing my live, so I'm actually not
Mhm.
posting. I use that as my LinkedIn engagement.
Mhm.
Mondays I'll reserve for an announcement of the guest, or Tuesdays, Monday or Tuesday, depending on what's happening. Fridays is usually pretty lighthearted. That's not the time to put a heavy-handed message out there. I find that the platform is more responsive to something a little bit more weekend kind of mindset-y. And that would leave me, Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I will rotate personal stories, tips, something that I heard in the news that's super relevant. I really like doing those LinkedIn sliders. They are a little time consuming, but I think that, especially since I'm such a visual person and my audience is too, that I think that those are really wonderful for branding. And then I do want to, I'm going to throw this out there. Hey, Alex, my name is Loren. um, so my opinion about the length of the post, number of words, you know, I don't look at the number of words. How I look at content and its presence is, am I bringing somebody through what Neville Medora, a great content writer, talks about, which is the slope, or he actually uses like a what do they call it? Like a water park slide.
Mhm.
So the first level, the headline, down the next level, down the next level, down the next level. But what I like to keep it scannable. So, making it easy for somebody who's using it on their phone, can read it quickly. I have to, be really mindful of the fact that there's a lot of noise out there. And so having a good hook in the headline, and then keeping that content really stealth, removing a lot of filler words, things that don't necessarily need to be there, can dilute the message of the content. So I do aim to keep it short. I don't count the number. I know that they've increased the number of words. Is it 3,000 now?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's actually affecting the engagement. I think people now, if they're staying on the post longer, that affects the dwell time and everything else. But that's a whole separate discussion. I mean, I think for me, part of content is you want to not only engage, get people engaged, but you want to engage back. It's not a one-way conversation. A lot of times I'll go back to a post after 2, 3, 4 hours and look at what's been there and follow up.
Mm-hmm.
And it serves two purposes. One is, of course, it gets the post more relevant, but it also shows if you're taking the time to post on my feed, I want to acknowledge it, not just like, but appreciate it, and maybe take it from there. Because some of my best connections I actually made over the years just through commenting and working through content together.
Totally. Yeah, completely agree with that. Completely agree.
So I think, when I think about content in my case, the weekends are more used to be more lighthearted for me. I think now my challenge is to come up with different content than everyone else that has out there. I mean, there's so many of the same types of posts out there, and it's not that I can't speak to them, but I want to speak to them in my voice,
Mm-hmm.
which it's taken me a while to find. I used to bust my chops about this, Lauren. I used to say, "What's your voice? What's your voice? You should know what your voice is." Well, I didn't for a while. So what does that mean actually when you say your voice?
Your voice is a combination of a lot of things. It could be the the stance you want to take, right?
Mm-hmm.
The stance that you want to have ownership for. We know many content, and it does go back to your branding, right? Like, for example, David Breyer, who's a huge content contributor on LinkedIn, his voice is always going to be some level of rising above the noise, right? He's always going to be about disruption. I can expect that. I can expect that there's going to be nothing Pollyanna about his posts. It's going to have some sass to it. It's going to have a great visual or something that accompanies it. That's part of his voice, is to disrupt, right? We all know Gary Vaynerchuk, and we all know other people that, you know, drop the F-bomb, or some people are really against that. So either way, whatever it is, no judgment, get comfortable with yours, whatever that is. And so having that, you know, consistent ownership over the thing that you're super committed to, passionate about, is part of your voice. In addition to that, you know, how you are actually delivering that message, right? Like, are you, you know, delivering it in a humorous tone, in a serious tone? We know plenty of people that like to use sarcasm, which I think is super effective for those people. I tend not to be a sarcastic person, so that wouldn't apply. But I think that you know, finding your voice is really about owning your message, owning your brand, owning what you're committed to, and being consistent with it.
I definitely agree. I think I have found in my case that my brand is the same, but my voice has changed a little bit over time. Maybe not specific to me, but based on the environment and situations. And I think that's important too, is not to be stagnant. What you wrote about a year ago may still be relevant, but you may have to do a little twist on it, or think about it in the perspective of now, because too many people I know do the same thing again. And, you know, I know them, so I'm just going to move on. I want you to reach out to me or reach out to Loren and see something of interest. And we may not be your cup of tea, either of us. That's okay too, because we all have our own things that we do. But if you're going to come to either of us, we want you to come to us for something valuable.
And I invite you to be controversial. Do not be afraid of taking a counterpoint with anything. I disagree with that. I've seen people go way too far with that. And there's a bunch of mean girls out there sometimes. I don't advocate that. I think that's not the place. So I've used this definition before. I'll share it here. You know, the definition of tact, as I've learned, is making your point without making an enemy. So, you know, you can actually ride that line very effectively, and LinkedIn encourages, you know, alternate points of view. So please bring it.
So we have to do an online shout out apology. Alex is apologizing. So I figure if we're going to say one, we have to say both. And, you know, in terms of optimal numbers for posting, I can tell you my optimum is like 800 to 900 words, because I try to write my posts as I write a blog post. And that's just me, because I'm not a long form writer, and 2,000, 3,000 words that's long form to me. And at that point, I'm like, I forgot what I wrote about. You know, I want to have a start, beginning, and end. That probably goes back because I was a newspaper reporter for a while. So I'm kind of used to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the thing was, you know, if you're writing a long post, sorry, it better be good, because that's a huge investment that you're asking somebody to make in reading that. So I would say, you know, make sure that it really delivers some extreme value.
And I would almost say, if it's that long a post, maybe break it up into multiple posts over days, because
as an article,
it's a lot easier that way.
Absolutely. Great point.
You know, I think it's a lot of time when I started out posting, I would actually look at articles, put an article up and mention why I'm posting the article, because I needed that help to kind of gain that. But now I just feel comfortable. I think all of us that write content feel comfortable just sharing without needing to have the crutch, if you will, of an article. But again, that takes time, but not as much time as you think. And I think the question that everyone asks me is, how often should you post? You know, and it's I do it almost every day, but it doesn't have to be every day. It's good.
I like Rachel Simon's suggestion, which is as much as you're able to commit to. Right? Yeah. Commit to those days, whatever they are, once a week, twice a week, whatever it is. You know, I don't post on the weekends anymore. I used to, but I also found I was getting burnt out. So, I let it go.
No, I agree. I mean, I try not. I take one day off a week to not post. Different day of the week. For me, what I've been more interested in is the timing, the time of the day, because I used to focus everything in the morning, and then I realized, well, you know what? It's the morning here, but it's still the middle of the night in California, or further in the Pacific, or but on the same side, it's the afternoon in England. You're never going to get that perfect sweet spot, but if your content is engaging, people will eventually get to it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, of course, Rachel, have to give a shout out to Rachel. Woo-hoo-hoo. Not pulling for the Falcons this weekend, Rachel, just to let you know. I mean, we're playing the Giants. Giants are playing the Falcons. But in all seriousness, we all talk amongst us. We know little things about each other because it makes it easier for us to connect. And I think most of the people here know other people here. Even if nothing else, we did this as a project in our job search group. We actually, 10 of us got together and talked about posting this together, but not the same thing. We would each have a different thing to post for like a week or so, and we would all engage with each other's posts, not so much a pod per se, but just to help get it going, because everyone was afraid to do it themselves. So it's almost like you had a posting buddy, if you will.
Right. I also want to do a separate shout out to Rachel Simon because she really is a living, breathing example of somebody who got way out of her comfort zone. And I know this because Rachel was very transparent about it on LinkedIn. She doesn't like doing video, but she did video. She doesn't really cotton to self-promotion, and she did a shout out for her newsletter. And so, for her, that's a big win. For all of us, we're like, yeah, like, all right, like, that's awesome. And so I think that if you are going on LinkedIn and considering it, please do yourself a favor and get outside of your comfort zone. I was actually reading a book over the weekend that was talking about how self-esteem comes from doing hard things that we think we can't do, and having that level of, ability to pat ourselves on the back and say, yeah, I did it. Yeah. And that's really a great opportunity. As many of you know, I posted on LinkedIn. I took an ice bath this summer, and that was getting out of my comfort zone.
And my comfort zone is actually having these conversations. It is it is extremely hard for me, and people that know me know that I will be stressing out all morning. Is the connection right? Am I doing this well? When it's over, I'll be like, and it's just the trick about it is to get out of your comfort zone and do it. And Loren, I'm amazed at how you are doing this. And I know that it may not, it's hard. It's hard for people to realize that any of us can do this. And the hardest part is just to get started, do it the first time. When you do your first post, may not get much, but you just never know. Do it again and again.
Many of you may also know a wonderful content contributor, Brendan Kamarasamy. He is also a communication coach, and I do work with him, and he's absolutely incredible. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is because he let me know that the first time we were meeting and working on our keynotes, that I was going to suck. I mean, he's like, "You're going to suck," and I was like, "Oh, okay." Like. The only way to get better is to keep doing something. And we forget that because we look at people and they're like, ooh, so many comments or this or that. And it's like, yeah, they've been doing this for a while. They've invested the time and now they're yielding the results. How about that?
Well, I had my you suck moment that I was thinking back to, because my first job was in media as a sports reporter way back when. And the guy who I reported to was the assistant editor, and I could do everything right. And he said, "You suck. It's not good. Keep writing." And I was so freaking pissed at him. I'm like, this is good. This is good. And as we developed a better relationship, he said, I look at myself as Lou Grant from the newsroom. I'm never going to, the minute you think you're good is when you're going to be resting on your laurels. So I'm just going to keep making you realize that you can do better. And it's a hard thing when you're young. It's like, who's this person? But then you realize it. Sometimes you need to be told that. So, as Joey says, every expert was a beginner. Mike, any tips for writing content on subjects that have stigma attached?
I would love to have an example of something that you're referring to. I'll tell you that I have posted many a thing on ageism, because age has a huge stigma, as you can tell. My kids would remind many of us that I'm not a green banana, and the stigma that's been attached in the hiring process specifically. But there's so many other stigma related things that have become more normalized, specifically over the pandemic. Mental health, the topics of burnout, which it used to be like, oh, you know what, go get a Kleenex, you have burnout. Now people are realizing not only is burnout real, but it has been a huge contributor to the Great Resignation, right? People are like, screw that, I don't know if I want to be a road warrior anymore, or I don't want to work, all day, all night on my weekends. So, there's been a lot more transparency, and also I think a greater level of appreciation for being, upfront about it.
Yeah, I also think, and I learned this lesson last week actually, don't ever assume that your post is going to go the way you think it's going to go. Because you write a post and I had an idea of what I thought the results were going to be, and I was shocked. I was like, then it's just me, with my preconceived notions. And I didn't let that show, but at the same time, you want to be very open with what can happen, because I'm writing from my experience, and it's not everyone else's experience. So you have to be very, very flexible in that way. So, as Nancy says, it's a marathon. The more you post, the more interaction you get. I think, and if there could be any one takeaway from this, it's that all of us started from the same point. And just because we may have been on LinkedIn a while, it doesn't mean we've been any better at this for a while. We just kind of have figured out a lot of stuff. We've had a lot of bad things happen and good things. And I think for me, one of the best things about the pandemic, if it's a best thing, is I've met a lot of great people I never normally would meet. And for that, I'll be eternally grateful. Now, another shout out, Loren, why don't you talk a little bit about you and what because it says portfolio rocket.c, which I know is com, but what exactly is that?
So Portfolio Rocket is a career consultancy that shows and teaches senior level creatives and marketers how to get found in the marketplace and land the positions with the companies they are looking for, without sacrificing any level of compensation. In fact, the majority of my clients have achieved anywhere between 40 and 116% increase of their base salaries. But I really approach this, and I encourage anybody who is currently on the market to really address the challenges that happen below the surface before you go out and just smear your resume out there, and start applying to a million jobs. Please think about your ROI. Think about where you are able to really be able to align what it is that you're looking for with your top 10, 15 companies. This is not a numbers game, right? It's not a numbers game and you just keep throwing it out and throwing it out and throwing it out. This is really about being the best job seeker within the world of hiring, right? Not necessarily every best candidate gets hired. It's usually the best job seeker. So, this is a time, specifically right now, where there's a lot of hiring happening before fourth quarter comes in. This is a perfect time to be nailing down the alignment of your next role, what you loved about your last role, what you want to discard going forward. I have people that have been, senior level managers for years that are like, I just want to be an individual contributor. I don't want to carry all this management responsibility anymore.
Right.
Or people in the opposite direction saying, you know what, I've been an enterprise for a really long time, and now I really want to, delve into the world of startup, and I don't care about title at all. So, but those kinds of clarifying questions really they equal sign your success. And I specialize in the hidden job market. And then there's been a lot of controversy around using that term. So what I want to just disclose is it's not hidden like you can't find it. It's hidden because that position could be in the hiring manager's head and they haven't posted it yet. And it could also be with a company that cannot afford to necessarily spend the $800+ per month to put a job posting out there. So 60 to 80% of our country, the US, is small and medium-sized businesses. And so many of them cannot afford to do what a global organization or a large enterprise can in terms of posting. So be there before they may even have the need posted, or they may be pipelining and you don't know it either. So keep building those conversations.
And networking is so important. I actually posted. I've had several people reach out to me about these hidden jobs. They're jobs that exist, but they're not posting them online because they trust people and get them good candidates based on the relationships. It's not to say that this doesn't happen, that there aren't jobs out there that you can apply to online, but you want to focus your energies on what works and what doesn't work. And I do agree with Shelley, because one of the idea, if you write about your experience, whether about how you maybe not lost the job and how you're fired, and without venting and putting a finger pointing at the company, from a mental health standpoint, I think that's a really great thing to do. Before LinkedIn really got going back in the day, when I lost a job, I actually journaled, wrote a diary, kind of getting my thoughts down. It's whatever it takes to do. I think you're not alone. And I know it's such an overused word, just like anything else, but it's true. You have people all around who are willing to help and support you. So I know, Loren, you're going to be speaking in Marty's group, I think, coming up, right? Marty Latman. What's the topic going to be?
I believe it is, I think it is how to multiply your network. I have to double check that, but
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it is about this strategy that I've been using. It's been very effective with my clients on how to expand your network outside of the verticals that you already know about, and also turn those coffees into informational interviews, which means that you're usually one of 12 or 15 to get hired for that next role.
So I want to thank you, Loren. We went a little bit longer than we normally do, but I really appreciate it. Now, you have your LinkedIn Live tomorrow. Is it 9:30 on the East Coast, or what time is it?
9:30 on the East Coast tomorrow. We have Liam Darmati. Many of you know Liam, amazing content creator. And he's going to be talking under the umbrella of future of work about employer branding. What companies are doing to attract the right talent beyond a lot of the stuff that you're going to see on their website, and specifically, what they're doing to promote their values so that there is a culture, not just marketing messaging.
So I want to end with just the last question here. How do you find about these hidden jobs? And I will say the best way to find out about them is to ask, talk to people, do research on the companies, perhaps. It's the jobs are out there. I mean, I don't even know where all the hidden jobs are, but other people may know about them. I know of a couple of local companies that are hiring only because we've talked amongst ourselves, and there is no one way to find out. That's why it's a hidden per se market. I don't know if you have any specific suggestions for Shanna.
What I would say about the quote unquote hidden job market is they are, in the minds of decision makers, people you'll run into at your kids' soccer games. Everybody is a talent scout. Everyone, if you are a CMO, if you are a manager, if you're talking to somebody at an event or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever it is, and you're listening carefully, wow, we're so overworked, so overstaffed. Our department is blowing up. Wow, I wonder
Or
if
the other thing is, if you can go online,
you have to have your ear to the ground and ask the questions. There are lots and lots of ways to assess, to find out if they exist on LinkedIn, for sure. There's other ways through your connections, but certainly, they are there, and they are absolutely yours for the taking, especially now.
I would say two things as a follow-up. Go to your local chambers of commerces or other places like that and have conversations there. And maybe consider subscribing to newsletters, business newsletters. Go online, because if you find articles and it says that, well, we're having a problem or just something about the company and you can fit there, reach out to them on LinkedIn, connect with them. You just never know.
Absolutely. In the agency world, if somebody just won a new piece of business, guess what? They're going to be ramping up.
Yep.
I mean, keep your ear to the ground. They're definitely, they may be hiding in plain sight. So
Exactly.
stay tuned.
Well, thanks a lot, Loren. I want to be respectful of your time too, because you're so busy, which is a good thing. And I want to thank everyone for coming today. And we'll see you here next week. Actually, next week we're going to be here at 10 o'clock instead, because we have someone from England coming in. So we're going to be respectful of the time. But thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great day. Stay safe.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
See you on LinkedIn. Bye.
Yes.